I just thought this sounds all a bit woo-woo, and this is not for me. I would say try these tried and true things first before you spend your money on supplements. Don't you think that a pharmaceutical company would have patented it 20 years ago and be making billions of dollars from it? Right now, we don't typically advocate sleeping pills as the first-line defense agent against or for insomnia as a treatment. 5 standard tips, what we call sort of sleep hygiene that you can do. And then I'll come on to maybe just some unconventional tips that we've sort of touched on. And we've spoken about many of these. The first thing I would recommend people to do, and this is why when some people say, oh, what about this new sleep supplement? Or, it's 40 quid for this bottle of these new sleep natural medications. I'm going to give it a try. I would say try these tried and true things first before you spend your money on supplements. First thing is regularity. Go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time, no matter whether it's the weekday or the weekend. Your brain expects regularity. It thrives best under conditions of regularity. When you give it regularity, you can improve the quantity and the quantity of your sleep. The second thing is get some darkness at night. As I said, we don't get enough darkness in the modern world. And so the trick I would offer, and I don't use it, I don't like the word hack, but the sort of suggestion would be, in the last hour before bed, try this experiment for everyone listening for the next week. Dim down half of the lights or switch off half of the lights, or even 3/4 of the lights in your home in the last hour before bed.
All of the lights in every room?
In all of the rooms. Switch off almost all of the light. Now, I'm not suggesting be unsafe and walk around in the darkness in the last hour. That's not what I'm saying. Just dim down, switch off half of the lights. You will be surprised at how sleepy that darkness will make you feel. And it's also an incredible behavioral trigger to signal to your brain that it is time for sleep, that darkness is around me. That's the second tip, is darkness. The third tip is temperature. Most people sleep in an ambient bedroom temperature that is too high. And you need to aim for a bedroom temperature of about 18.5 degrees Celsius, or around about 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, if I'm probably butchering the mathematics there on that. But you need to get cool. Now, you can wear thick socks, you can have a hot water bottle, that's fine. But the ambient needs to be cold, because you need to drop your core body temperature and your brain temperature by about 1 degree Celsius to fall asleep and stay asleep. And it's the reason that you will always find it easier to fall asleep in a room that's too cold than too hot. So make your bedroom cold, make it dark like a cave. The fourth question would be sort of fourth suggestion would be walk it out. And we've spoken about this, the 30-minute rule, get up, do something different, or meditate. Don't lie in bed awake for too long. Then the final two things we've spoken about, we've spoken about caffeine. We haven't spoken about alcohol, but let me just say, as the kind of headline of it, alcohol is not a sleep aid. Many people use it as a sleep aid. It is not your friend. Alcohol, again, is a sedative, so it knocks you out. The second is that it fragments your sleep. So you wake up, your sleep is littered with all of these small awakenings. Most of them you don't remember because they're too brief, but it makes for miserable, lousy quality sleep. And the final thing is that alcohol is very good at blocking your REM sleep or your dream sleep, which we know is critical for many other functions as well. So alcohol's not your friend. That's the sort of the final tip. Again, just if you're with friends, have a glass of red wine. Just know, okay, my sleep's not going to be great.
No, thank you, Matt.
Right now, we don't typically advocate sleeping pills as the first-line defense agent against or for insomnia as a treatment. In fact, in 2016, the American College, and again, this is me simply describing the science. This is me being descriptive of the science, not prescriptive in terms of medicine, because I'm not a medical doctor. But in 2016, the American College of Physicians, they had an expert panel who surveyed all of the literature on classic sleeping pills. And what they suggested was that sleeping pills must no longer be the first-line treatment for insomnia. It has to be cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or what we call CBTI, which is a psychological intervention that we can speak about. But their recommendation was that they found I think their wording was small and of questionable clinical importance in terms of the benefits of sleeping pills. Now, there is a time and a place in clinical medicine for sleeping pills, but usually as an adjunct in combination with cognitive behavioral therapy. They are not advocated for long-term use, so they're usually advocated for short-term use, weeks. Most people have been on them for months, if not years, these classic sleeping pills, and that's a problem because those sleeping pills are in a class of drugs that we call the sedative hypnotics, and sedation is not sleep. For some subset of some people, there are some of these quote-unquote sleep supplements that may benefit, but overall, the studies are very clear. None of them are efficacious. And when you think about it, it makes sense. If there was some cheap sleep supplement that you could buy on Amazon, that was the Shangri-La of good sleep, that was this miracle sleep drug, don't you think that a pharmaceutical company would have patented it 20 years ago and be making billions of dollars from it? That alone tells you all that you need to know about, these natural sleep supplements. When you are struggling to sleep or you've woken up in the middle of the night, the prototypical recommendation is that after about 30 minutes of time awake, you should get out of your bed and you should just go to a different room and do something like, read a book or listen to a podcast. Don't eat because it then trains your brain to wake up to do that. Don't start working or getting in front of a computer screen. I said listen to a podcast. Sure, just make sure your phone's in. You don't start scrolling any more than that. But you can do relaxing things, stretch, meditate. The reason is because if you start to spend a lot of time awake in your bed, your brain is an incredibly associative device. And very quickly, it will start to learn that this thing called your bed is this place where I'm always awake. And therefore, you start to learn through this repeated loop of behavior that I'm always going to be wide awake in bed. And we need to break that association. And that's why we say get out of bed after about 30 minutes, because you're just training your brain to think that this thing called my bed is the place where I'm never asleep. And we want to break that and only return to bed when you're sleepy. And there's no time limit for that. And that way, gradually, it's much better because you will relearn the association that your bed, just as when you were young, it was guaranteed that your bed is this place where you will always be asleep. The first thing I would suggest is meditation. I am a hard-nosed scientist. And when I was researching that for the book, I was, I just thought this sounds all a bit woo-woo. And, I live and work in Berkeley, California, which is kind of, the free speech, flower power movement, San Francisco, flowers in your hair business. I just thought this is all a bit, holding hands and singing Kumbaya. This is not for me, this meditation stuff. I couldn't get away from the strength of the data. It was immensely powerful regarding sleep and its benefits on insomnia and sleep. So I started meditating, and now I meditate for 10 minutes before bed every single night, and I've been doing that for about 4 years. So I would say even if it's in the middle of the night, and if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'll start to try to walk myself through a meditation. Because when you are struggling to sleep or you've woken up in the middle of the night, what you don't want to be doing is focusing on either what did I do today? What did I not do today? What did I do poorly? Oh my goodness, what have I still got to do tomorrow? And at that point, things are just a disaster. You're wide awake. What all of the things that we've just discussed do is they take your mind off itself. And at that point, then you start to allow sleep to come back naturally. That's why one of the other suggestions is take yourself for a mental walk. So don't count sheep, by the way, that doesn't work. A colleague of mine at UC Berkeley did the study. It actually takes you longer to fall asleep if you're counting sheep. What she found, Dr. Alison Harvey, was that if you just close your eyes and you think about a walk that you take frequently, let's say it's a walk with the dog, and you think about it in high fidelity detail. So I close my eyes, I go out the door, I take a left down the steps, and I'm going to go up the street. I take the first left, past that pine tree. That's the level of detail. If you just walk yourself on that mental walk, sure enough, people fall asleep in about 50% less time, half. The other thing I would note, by the way, though, is if none of these things are working for you, if this is the final suggestion I have, if you're lying there awake, firstly, by the way, if you're struggling with sleep, remove all clock faces from your bedroom. It's one of the best pieces of advice I can give you. knowing what time of night it is no favor. So knowing now that it's 3:23 a.m. in the morning and I'm still struggling to fall asleep, and then I look back at the clock and it's now 4:03 a.m. and I've still been awake, and now it's 4:27 and I've got to wake up at 6:30 a.m. Knowing that has no utility for you. Remove all clock faces from your bedroom. It is a gift. But coming back to the final suggestion, if you don't want to get out of bed, if you don't want to listen to a podcast, the final thing I would say is just accept and say, look, it's okay. Tonight is not my night. It is not the worst thing in the world. And instead of trying to sleep, all I'm going to do here is lie in bed and I'm just going to rest. Because wouldn't it be lovely if someone came to you in the middle of your workday, you're just stressed, and someone said, by the way, just come into this room, there's a bed here, just lie down and just rest for an hour. Wouldn't it be lovely? Just have a good old rest for an hour, just rest there. And I would say that if you can't sleep, just lie in bed, stop worrying about sleep and not being able to get it, stop worrying about the next day, just lie in there and enjoy a nice, good old rest. And by the way, usually what happens is that after you start thinking, okay, I'm going to rest, the next thing you remember is the alarm clock going off at 6:30 because finally you stop trying and sleep happens. So